Hello, everyone. My name is Kasia Griffiths. I am a biological dentist, and today I would like to introduce my special guest, who is Morley Robbins. Morley, this morning when I got up, I was thinking, how can I introduce you? A man who spent over 60,000 hours or 6,000 hours in research, over 12,000 papers, scientific papers.
Yep.
And I thought, okay, maybe genius, but genius will not actually show you your kindness,
Persistent.
your yes, it will not. It will. Then I came across a magnesium man, but that would be just narrowing. A copper man, maybe more, but not still narrowing. So I was
Right.
thinking, and I came to the name. Actually, wrote it down, and it was a beacon of knowledge. And you know what I found? A beacon of knowledge. It is a human guiding light who remains steady, helping others navigate through confusion and misinformation. What do you think?
Wow, that's beautiful. I've never been um, uh, graced with such a beautiful definition, but that kind of captures it, doesn't it?
So
It's
yeah, this is how you are, isn't it? Kind and helping others, not just diving in the knowledge, but making sure that people incorporate into the
yeah.
work. As you know, I'm a dentist, and today I would like to talk about periodontitis in the aspects
Mhm.
of iron dysregulation.
Yeah.
I know iron is also a topic which you like to talk about, and if you could show us because what I have realized that most of patients with periodontitis are the people who had so-called anemia. Okay, they come
Okay.
with the,
Right.
I had anemia. They were
Right.
given iron, and usually the iron made the periodontal disease worse.
Fascinating. Yeah. Which makes sense, which we'll discuss, but that does make perfect sense.
So, why do you think iron is a problem for periodontitis if we have something like sequestration of iron in a time of inflammation?
Yeah. No, great question. I think I would guess that it's a overwhelming amount of iron that the tissue can't handle it. And I think just to back up, I think it's important for people to realize that, like the Bible that's used in medicine to describe all these symptoms that we have is called the Merck Manual, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard of that. Well, there are actually 20,000 different conditions that are described in that in that textbook. But
Hmm.
what's very disorienting is to come to realize that every one of them starts with iron induced oxidative stress. And, and it's important for people to understand that we live on a planet with oxygen. We know that. We're breathing oxygen along with nitrogen all day long. Oxygen is about 21% of the air we breathe. And we can't live without it, but we can't age without it either. And so what we need to do is we need to neutralize that oxygen and turn it into water. And so that's the most important chemical transaction on the planet is to turn O2, one molecule of O2, into two molecules of H2O, that water. And when that happens, that's what releases energy so we can go about our day. Now, what's amazing is when you think about um, two useful points of perspective, we make our body weight in ATP every day. So we're making it and we're expending it, and making it and expending it. And just to put that into perspective, we our heart beats 72 times a minute. I think it's like 20,000 times a day. We expend 1 billion ATP for every heartbeat. I mean, the numbers just get so big so fast. But I think what's important for people to understand is that half of the energy we make every day is to keep two minerals in balance, sodium and potassium. Constant need to keep those in balance so that the cell can communicate and go about its business. So it's a very interesting process. But when we're not able to turn oxygen into water, it's going to become something called oxidative stress. And it's an oxygen molecule that's changed its function, changed its whole nature. And that becomes disruptive inside our body and inside our tissue. And what happens is, as the iron builds in our body, as we age or as we get exposed to more and more iron, it creates this oxidative stress in different parts of the body. And the part that I find the most fascinating is, why does it affect some people in their mouth, parodontitis? Why does it affect some people in their heart, cardiomyocytes? Why does it affect some people in their feet or their knees, like arthritis? That's the great mystery, is there isn't a consistent focus for this process of iron-induced oxidative stress. And I think that's, to me, one of the great mysteries is, why does it have such variation throughout the body? And I'm sure that within your patient population, you see people who have a variety of these conditions. It's not just the periodontitis, but that's the one that they're most concerned about as it relates to their time with you. And I think, to me, the mouth would be a window to the body, right? Isn't that kind of revealing? Yeah, it becomes this billboard of what else is going on inside the body. And for some reason, it's expressing in the mouth. And so there's a connection between the eyes and the liver. There's a connection between the ears and the kidney. And I think, isn't there a relationship between the mouth and the gut? The,
It is, but
yeah.
also in the mouse we can see if it's hypoxia,
Okay.
because
Sure.
the mouse is changing the color when it's
Oh,
like in oxygen. So we can see
oh,
some other
that
other
makes so
things.
much sense. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that the tragedy is, learning about the expression of the mouth, expression of the teeth, expression of the oral tissue. I think it'd be, to learn that in kindergarten or in grade school, it would be fantastic, because you would know where the problem was within the body. And I'm sure would bet, does periodontitis always start in the same spot, or could it be anywhere uh, along the dental ridge? I don't know anything about that. Does it have a preference for
It
where it
does
starts?
it, it does have preferences at the molars.
Okay.
First and second molar, that's usually where the tissue gets broken, like the ligaments of the
Yep.
tooth, the pockets get enlarged. They're usually first and second molar. Yeah,
So what do the first and second molar connect to? I mean, every
intestines.
intestine. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So what's important about that is that everyone worries about absorbing enough iron. We live in a society where people, like as you said, they think they're anemic, or they know they're anemic. But there's two forms of anemia. There's absolute iron deficiency, which is very rare, unless you've been in a car accident or you've been
I was
shot.
going to ask you if you ever seen a person with real iron deficiency, because I haven't.
No, I haven't either.
I haven't either.
Um, a lot of people think they are, but the other form of anemia is called functional iron deficiency. And that, almost without exception, is caused by a lack of copper in the diet. And so the part that people need to learn is that copper is the general and iron is the foot soldier. So copper's in charge. Every facet of iron metabolism that people might be familiar with has a copper regulatory function guiding it. It's absolutely amazing. But the thing is, in terms of the absorption, it's a two-step process. First, you have to get the iron inside the cells of the intestine called the enterocyte. Enterocyte. So it's the cells that allow the nutrients or whatever the food or metabolite might be into the cell. Then we got to get iron out of the cell and into the bloodstream. That's the most important part of the absorption. And when people show low iron on a blood test, it's usually because the iron is stuck either in the enterocytes or it's stuck in what are called recycling macrophages. And those are the Pac-Men that gobble up the dying red blood cells. Well, the iron's got to get out. And there's a little doorway that lets the iron out, and there's a copper doorman that opens the doorway. And it's really important for people to know that that's happening. And so to me, it makes perfect sense that parodontitis would start in the gut because the iron can't get out properly. It festers in the enterocyte, and then it's somehow signaling this aggravation, this inflammation is finding its way to the mouth. And what we're supposed to be able to do is see that inflammation and say, oh, I must have a problem with iron. But we've never been taught that that's how it works.
That's true.
Yeah.
Because when you come to the dentist, normally the dentists don't ask the patient to do the blood tests. So
No.
what we do, we just trying to treat. I think since maybe 10 years now, I don't see a patient who didn't come with the blood tests. And if that wouldn't be the case, I wouldn't know anything about the patient. I wouldn't know how to help because
Yeah,
periodontal treatment is not very successful. So if it doesn't work, why not to change? Why not to look into it?
exactly. No, you have to broaden your field of vision and begin to take in other variables. Um, is there a certain age where periodontitis is more prevalent?
Huh, used to be. That is a very good question because it used to be um, I would be observing this after 40 years old.
That's what I
Okay.
thought. Yeah.
But now,
Mhm.
and maybe we will have a chance to discuss this as much earlier, start after the 20s, since vitamin D is in fashion.
Wow. Wow.
This is
That's
how I noticed the toxicity of vitamin D when I saw people over 20 with enormous resorption of alveolar bone. So the pockets are higher, the deeper. There's
right,
more
right,
pathological microbiome because there's no oxygen, and it
right.
starts. um,
Well, that's surprising. I've had a number of conversations with your colleague Michael Gosweiler, who
mhm.
also does a lot of treatment for periodontal disease here in the States. And I've never learned that from him that there's been this gradual, or maybe not so gradual, re, re, um, development of that
Protection.
condition. Yeah, that's amazing. So the 40 age 40 makes sense to me because a lot of people find that their eyes require glasses when they're in their 40s, right?
Like a
And
retinol.
yeah, and it seems to be this great crossover when and it happened to me. I remember being celebrating my 40th birthday, and I had always worn glasses. And from the time I was 16, now I don't wear glasses. That tells you something. But I was 40 years old, went to the optometrist, and she told me that I needed bifocals. And I said,
Mm.
I don't want bifocals, just make the lenses stronger. So I came back in a few hours to try the glasses. I couldn't see anything. And she said, I told you you needed bifocals. I said, well, then make bifocals. So I had bifocals for 20 some years. Um, but then started doing the protocol and started putting castor oil inside my eyes. And now I don't need glasses. And so it makes sense to me that in your 40s, there would be this buildup. There seems to be this gradual accumulation of iron. And maybe it was affecting my teeth and I just didn't know it. That's fascinating to think about. But the fact that it's happening now in the 20s, um, kudos to you for connecting it back to vitamin D. And, and the reason why I bring up Mike Gosweiler is he's noticed the same thing in his practice, that there's a definite loss of integrity in the oral tissue with people who take vitamin D. And we actually came across an article, which I think you know about, but if not, I'll make sure you do have it. But it was researched probably in the 80s, I want to say, where they discovered that vitamin D was weakening a critical copper enzyme called lysyl oxidase. And that is one of many copper enzymes that, that has a particular function in the body. But lysyl oxidase's job is to blend elastin with collagen. So collagen is strength and elastin is flexibility, but it needs to bring those proteins together like a zipper, so that when the when tissue has strength and flexibility, it has integrity. And for some reason, the active form of vitamin D destabilizes that enzyme, and it's not able to knit the proteins together. So that would be an explanation for why there would be setting the stage for the periodontitis. And I would also bet that people are being exposed to more and more iron at a younger and younger age. That would be a likely expectation given the food system and the changes.
Yes,
Because
fortified.
yeah,
Mm.
fortified foods, it's 82 countries now fortify the food with iron. And it first started during the Second World War in 1941. But I think it's gotten out of control. So,
And then we're lacking copper
and then
because
we're
of
lacking.
Roundup, like glyphosate. And what
Mhm.
used to give us copper, it
Yep,
doesn't give anymore. So, and then since the time of COVID, everyone it takes zinc, vitamin D.
yep,
That is that's like a Bible. You have to take it if you want to survive COVID. And I noticed this since that time, all the problems started because uh, as I am a biological dentist, I used to, I do for years now this amalgam removal, the safe amalgam removal
right,
technique.
right.
So people started coming to me thinking they are having problem with amalgams. Then they started coming because they thought they have RCTs, root canal treated teeth. So maybe that's the reason why they feel fatigue,
Interesting. Yep,
exhausted. And I
right.
was thinking, yes, okay, I do it for last 20 years, but why the last 6, 7 years is madness. I'm sorry, but
Oh, absolutely.
everyone's got the problem with fatigue, uh, especially also cognition. Cognitive decline is
Right.
amazing
Yes.
in a
Yep.
moment.
Right.
But I didn't realize in the beginning is vitamin D. But what happened is these people were having the teeth taken out and the tissue wouldn't heal. They were coming after 2 years. They wanted to have
Oh
implant.
my.
And you
Wow.
look on the bone and it looks like extracted tooth would be yesterday, the day before.
Oh
It
my
was
gosh.
completely not healed. The gum was healed, but the bone wasn't. And I was thinking it must be something more. And as it was a bone, I thought, okay, what about vitamin D? And every person who had this problem had high level of vitamin D.
Well, a little while ago you were talking about inflammation, and that involves white blood cells called macrophages, which you know. And as I pointed out, they're like Pac-Man. They like to gobble up things, but they exist in two states, primarily two states. It's actually a little bit more, but I think for the purposes of our discussion, they exist in M1. M is for macrophage, M1 and M2. M1 is the inflammatory state, and M2 is the wound repair state. Now, what I've just learned recently, which I think maybe you know this, and you didn't bother to tell me, but I just learned recently that in the M1 state, the macrophage is circular. It's round like a pancake. When it gets activated and becomes M2, which requires copper, ding, 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 it becomes rectangular. It has a completely different shape. And so in the M1 state, it's using glycolysis to make energy. It's not a very efficient way to make energy. But when it goes to M2, it's using beta oxidation, which means it's breaking down fat. There's an enormous change of energy. So if we're using glycolysis, we're making 32 ATP. When we're breaking down fat, we're making 140 ATP. So an enormous change in energy production. And I think that wound repair process requires more energy because it probably requires more thought. To repair tissue requires more intellect in terms of what the I guess it's osteoblasts that would be building the bone. Isn't that?
That's right.
And then the other tissues that would support it. But that would suggest that a loose translation of what you just shared means that somehow vitamin D is preventing the conversion of M1 to M2. It's somehow blocking copper from being able to do that. And that's an amazing thing to think about. And I've been suspicious of vitamin D for a long time, as you know.
Mm.
And I learned more about it by talking to he was a lipid expert, fat expert. His name was Fred Kumro. He was here in the States at the University of Illinois. And he did a decade of studies with pigs. People may not know that the metabolism of a pig is very similar to the metabolism of a human. We know some friends who are pigs. At least we think they are. But their metabolism is very similar to ours. And he found back, this was back in the 70s and 80s, he discovered that vitamin D was very damaging to their physiology, especially to their heart physiology. Yeah. And he was a keynote speaker in the early 80s at a conference that was talking about vitamin D metabolism. And there were Nobel laureates in the audience. And he got up and he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, you don't supplement with vitamin D." They kind of booed him off the stage. And I ended up having lunch with him in his home when he was 96 years old. It was an amazing experience. He was very vital guy. He was 96, but he was 6'2", and he was full of vim and vigor. And I asked him when we were having lunch, I said, "What happened as a result of that conference?" And he leans forward. He says, "Well, Morley, I'm the only one left standing. All the others are dead." And so he handed me, when we went, he was still working in his lab 20 hours a week at the age of 96, but he handed me a stack of research. He said, "I want you to read this and make sure people know about it." And it's been a long-standing challenge to my well-being, is taking this very counterintuitive stance on vitamin D. But I think we've helped a lot of people to get off that synthetic form. It's one thing to get it from cod liver oil, or get it by going outside in the sun. That's a very different form than taking the lanolin and other variations of that. People just don't realize that the source of the nutrient does matter, but there's no question it is the use of that nutrient changed, as you noted, during COVID. And that's in part, it was actually three factors. It was vitamin D, it was zinc, but it was also ascorbic acid.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
what most people don't
Intravenous.
know,
Yeah.
that's right. And what most people don't know is that those that's the triad to kill copper in the body. And so I renamed COVID. This was back in 2020. I renamed it COV, stands for coppers vanished, and ID stands for irons dysregulated. And the part that people may not know is that the cytokine storm that was causing people to die is just it's a runaway freight train of iron inside the cells. And the question is, where's copper? Copper should have been stopping that freight train. And I only found one article during 2020 that talked about copper's role to stop this craziness. And it was a group of French scientists that published that article. I was probably the only person who read it. It was so tragic that people were using zinc and ascorbic acid and vitamin D.
But the narration is still, people still do it.